Hey, good morning, guys. So it's bright and early in the fluorescent lights here in the prep room. So it's prep room, embalming room. It's where the embalming happens. A lot of times it's where the dressing, casketing also takes place. So bear with me. I've got a little tripod rigged up system here that I'm going to use as I'm showing you things as well. So this is where I feel like magic, I guess, happens in the funeral directing business. So many awesome reconstructive things can happen here. So many great moments where you can give back a loved one. So I love what can happen in this room. I love what people can be skilled and gifted at doing in this room. So just a little plug, because I really love the embalming aspect of this business. So I'm going to start with kind of when I come in the prep room. I know I had a question on what do you mean change of shoes? So I had posted something about I had my embalming shoes in my car because I keep them in a bag in the back of my car in case I get called in. I have them with me, and so someone had asked about why I have different shoes. Well, it's all part of PPE, which is personal protective equipment. So a lot of people use PPE in their businesses for different aspects of things that you may do. And in the prep room, embalming room, it is the gowns, the gloves, which I have on. And in this case, I change into just some general old little shoes. I have a little bag from the dollar store that I keep them in that's plastic lined, and so that way when I come in the prep room I put them on. So when I'm embalming, if there's any drips, splatters, anything of chemicals or bodily fluids or anything, I know that they stay on the shoes, they stay in the bag, they don't go into my house. And I feel like I'm even more conscious of this now that I have little ones at home, so that way none of that gets tracked into my home. It can all just stay right in that little plastic bag and stay in my car. We also wear gowns. Let's see if my jerry rig system works here. So a gown, it's plastic, goes on in the front, ties up in the back, and then you wear that while you're doing the embalming. Just protects from anything getting on your clothes, especially a lot of funeral directors have on their suits when they're doing this, and so they want to protect their suits while they're prepping, because they have to go back out and meet with the family or have to go back out and direct a funeral or something like that. So oftentimes we've got to make sure we really protect what we're wearing, because it might be the only thing we have, or we may have already dirtied an outfit that day and are in our backup outfit. So, all right, so I'm going to just kind of show you what I view every day. Well, when I'm in the prep room, which is not an every day, but okay. So this is just kind of a general landscape of the prep room. And I'm going to show you kind of what everything is here. There's my little easel stand I have rigged up. So I kind of talked about personal protective equipment. This is something a lot of embalmers also wear. Just a mask that helps kind of clean the air that we breathe in to help reduce some of the chemicals that we breathe. Not uncommon for a lot of different vocations that need to just keep the air clean that they're breathing in. So this is a prep table. So a deceased is brought in and they're put on this table. Sometimes they're porcelain, sometimes they're stainless steel like this. This is more often than not what you'll see maybe in movies or things like that. I think they tend to choose them because they do look a little colder, really sterile, but there's typically a water system hooked up here because there's water constantly running during the embalming to keep fluids moving down and out, and just have a nice water source for the embalmer if they need it, if there is any spills or anything like that. This is called a head block or a positioning block. You can see it's got some different sizing, divots and rounded edges and things. So this is used, the head would cradle and rest here, and so depending on if you need to kind of tilt the head high or low, I'm sure you've all been to a funeral home where the head was cranked up really high too far, or maybe looking back, kind of it's called stargazing. When their head's back way too far, it's kind of a term that we use. So that's used there. Then there's positioning blocks used on the arms. So elbows would rest here to get the hands up together on the chest. Oftentimes we'll use ones maybe down on the feet as well. But a lot of times you'll just have a kind of stack of different kind of positioning blocks down here that can be used. So the body is first washed, and then hair washed, mouth, eyes, nose, all sanitized. I'm gonna turn you back around to me. So mouth, nose, eyes, all sanitized, oftentimes with just a disinfectant spray, not Windex, but it's a disinfectant spray that's for embalming. Helps just kill all the germs that may come in. There's so many scary germs out there that bodies can have on them, especially coming from hospital or nursing home, that like MRSA and C. diff, things that we do not want to catch because they're highly contagious and just make you super sick, and we just don't want to get them because it's not always translated to us that somebody has that until maybe we see it on a death certificate, or it's told to us by the family. So it's not always the best communication system within the medical world that, you know, things get passed on. So we have to just make sure and treat everybody as if they're contagious, as if they do have disease or germs or whatever. So we disinfect, clean the body, and then kind of start positioning the features. When we mean positioning the features, closing the eyes, closing the mouth, trying to get the most natural look we can on their face. So, eye closing. These little buggers are called eye caps. They may look a little big because I'm holding them close to the camera. It's just a little plastic. It's almost like a little contact, and it has these little pokey grooves, if you can see them. So when it's put on, it goes under the eyelid, just like a contact would. And those little pokey grooves just hold the eyelid kind of down. Just an extra security to help hold that eye closed. So one goes in each eye. So mouth closure. There's a couple different ways folks close mouths. There's something called a needle injector. I don't personally use a needle injector. So it's this little doohickey. And one of these little wires, there's a whole bundle here. Let me grab one out for you. All right. So there's this little bracket, and there's a little wire attached to it. So that needle injector, you load this in, and then it, for lack of a better word, shoots, it implants this into the upper here and the lower here, inside under the lips, and then the metal is tied together to bind the mouth closed so it doesn't pop open. Some folks use suture, so they sew the mouth closed, and I've talked about this before. It's not sewing the lips, but it's sewing up through or down through. I hook the mandible and the septum, so there's no risk of it breaking ever. It doesn't break through tissue because you're hooked on bone. And Don't know why that's getting a little dark. I'm gonna prop this so I can use my hands more. And so, hold on. There we go. Trying to get the light right. Sorry, guys. And then, so once the mouth is closed up, sutured, oftentimes if someone's missing their teeth, you got to try and get that natural, you know, side, when you look at someone from the side, that kind of rounded, because without the teeth, it sinks in and it's flat and it's just not natural. So this is called a mouth former, and it goes in the mouth like that, and gives the teeth effect for someone who maybe doesn't have their teeth, doesn't have their dentures, doesn't have that natural, or maybe they haven't worn their dentures in, you know, 6 months to a year because they've been in a nursing home and they didn't want to, or they've lost 30 pounds, and so you put in those dentures and they look huge on the person. So with this, we can cut it down a little bit and make it a more natural mouth look for the person. So that is kind of closing up the features. And then yes, we do use glue to glue the mouth, glue the eyes, and it is all for the sake of the mouth not coming open, the eyes not popping open, things of that nature. We do use, going in the cupboard here, so Gorilla Glue. There is a glue that's made just for deceased individuals, which is, whoops, one of these. There's a little pin there in case it seals up just like glue at home. Trying to get one out. It's just another type of glue. But I do know a lot of people who just use Crazy Glue or Gorilla Glue or whatever you can buy at the local hardware store, because it kind of works the same. And it's a little cheaper than some of the stuff that's made just for the industry. So I know a lot of people that use a lot of different variety of things. So once the features are set, then we need to do the actual injecting of the fluid. So this is, I'm going to turn you back around here so I can kind of give you, whoops. All right. So this is the prep machine. This is the embalming machine. There's a few different styles. This one is all where you don't see the fluid during the embalming. Nothing too exciting. It's just an empty, looks like a sink from the outside. And then just a water nozzle for easy fill. There are several different knobs, your on off. You've got pressure, your pressure knob, and then this is flow rate. Whoops, this is flow rate and your pressure knob. Some embalmers swear by high pressure, some like low pressure, some like a high flow rate, some like a low. It's all personal preference and what people find that they like to use, and different bodies merit different levels of everything. This holds about 3 gallons, 2.5 to 3 gallons, and that's about what prep machines use, because a standard body, you should use about 2.5 to 3 gallons of fluid. And then you need to mix the fluid within it. So I'm going to go back over to the cupboards that I had open. So this is our one look at a cupboard that would have all the different fluids in it. There's many different chemical companies, and same type of thing. Different embalmers swear by different chemical companies. So in what I was saying, so let's go with 3 gallons of fluid. A lot of times you would use, this is the, what's called the arterial fluid. That means it is the main formaldehyde-based fluid, or sometimes glutaraldehyde based fluid that is used during embalming. You would use about 8 ounces of this per gallon, so a bottle and a half. There's other fluids that are for balancing the pHa of the water. Different water gives you different output. There's some that are for breaking up blood clots to help for drainage, to get the blood out most effectively. Water softener again. This one kind of looks like a Pepto-Bismol, and it has kind of a thickened color built into it just to help change the color of the deceased through this part of the fluid. There's some that's for edemic cases. So edema is when the tissue has fluid built up in it. If you've seen some older folks and their legs or their ankles or their feet are really kind of swollen and heavier than the rest of them appears, a lot of times they'll have fluid that's just building up in them. And so this will help get some of that fluid out and dry that out for preservation. There's also one that's for folks who are dehydrated. So this will add moisture into their tissue so that they don't dehydrate out during the visitation services. Then there is cavity fluid. So cavity fluid, I will explain that in a little bit when I talk about aspirating, so I don't want to get ahead of myself, but that goes into the main cavity of the person, which is the stomach area, the digestive area where all your internal organs are. So there's also different dyes that can be mixed in to the fluid just to help with coloring. There's a yellow, kind of a yellow oranger based, there's a pinker based. Typically females get a pinker base, males get a little bit orange or yellow, but you have different nationalities, different skin tones, so it's all a big chemistry, experiment. And so an embalmer has to really mix up the right amounts of everything and the right coloring and so forth for each individual to get the right results. And typically if we've got specialty cases like the edema or dehydration or decomposition where someone's been dead for a long time, then we have to factor those in as well and hopefully be able to get a good mix of fluid to get the good results that we want, to preserve that person for as long as we can. So that fluid is mixed up, and as you can tell, there's a lot of water. It's, with 3 gallons, you're not putting in a huge amount of embalming fluid. So it's not like you're just pumping in embalming fluid. That water is acting as the vessel to get that fluid distributed in the body. And embalming fluid works for the most part by it goes gaseous out into your tissue. So that fluid, the water gets it through your body and it gases out into your tissues to do the preservation. So, as the person's on the table, then we use, I don't have the scalpel's not loaded, so a scalpel, so the blade is not on here. This needs to be replaced. A lot of times people use a new blade on each individual. So the incision is done on the neck here. Typically, that looked really big. Maybe 2 inches, 3 inches. And the carotid and the jugular are right here. And those are the main artery and vein that an embalmer is going to use to do the embalming. They raise both of those, fluid goes in the artery, blood comes out the vein. And so if you don't get distribution in certain areas of your body, in your hands and your feet, you have to raise other arteries, other veins. So let's say I had to raise the one in the neck, and maybe this hand was just not getting fluid, and I had to raise the radial right in the wrist. that'd be called a 2-point. So that's how we refer. You know, if somebody was a 4-point or a 6-point or an 8-point or however many points is how many times we had to raise the vessels in different spots of the body. Most people it just takes one, but I've had numerous 4 or 6-point bodies lately. I've talked in past videos about how sometimes parts of the body seem to be dying before the individual because of medications and things like that. So we see a lot more where the blood is settled a lot more, or you're just not getting the distribution because the system was not working correctly for a longer period of time, and so it just creates more kind of hurdles once the preparation needs to be done in here in the prep room. So into the artery, so this is the tube that's hooked up to the prep machine, and so this, once again, kind of looks huge when I hold it up. This goes into the artery and then is clamped in. So this is just how it is injected in. And it's about the width of kind of a standard normal artery, but normal is, there's so many variables. Thanks, Kristen. There's so many variables in what an artery is going to look like. Huge, small, hard and crunchy, if it's been filling with plaque and with some bad stuff. So that is how the fluid goes in. And then there's different ways when the blood comes out. Sometimes it's called free drain and you just kind of let it go and it goes down the drain. Some people put a tube in so it goes through the tube right down into the drain so it doesn't drain out on the table. Personal preference for each embalmer. And yes, it goes right down the main drain, just like your sink at home. It's the same system that it goes to, same exit point, same drains. So, okay, so that happens. While that's happening, the body is being washed and massaged. So we're trying to help that circulation get going because the heart's not pumping. The heart's not doing the job of getting that stuff moving. So we as the embalmers need to be helping that along. So we're trying to push the embalming fluid in and hopefully get the blood flowing out, and try and make sure that it's in every part of the body. Let me get you propped again. See if this will work. Okay. Make sure that's in every part of the body so that way we get good color in the face, good color in the hands, the most natural color that we can get. You can tell from the tissue on the body, you can kind of pinch like a back of a hand gently, and as that tissue will start firming up as you're embalming. So you can see the results pretty quickly of what it's doing. But you can tell once there's fluid in all the extremities, once it's in the feet, the hands, the face is cleared and looks great. So you can tell when that's all been done. So let me show you a couple different tools, I guess, that we use. So let's see. Forceps, just pinching. I use these. I'll put cotton around them when I clean the nose and to use to clean out the nose. I mean, think about when you go to a visitation and you walk up to the person, you're looking up their nose literally. So got to be cleaned, got to be trimmed, you know, because that's definitely something that gets looked at. Then we've got clamps going on. Use these for different things. Sometimes if you've got maybe the artery's frail, it's breaking, I'll clamp it just to make sure I don't lose it. Just different things that you can use these for. Clamping on when you put the tube into the artery, you can clamp it on. I've got needles for sewing or suturing, as it's called when it's a medical type of thing. Let's see. I'm gonna kind of look in the cupboards here and see what else we've got going for that part. So all kinds of different suture here. Shave cream. I shave everybody. Females, non-females, well, that'd be a male, females and males. And really important to especially even shave women because they cosmetize better. When you do have to put makeup on, then you're not looking at every little fine hair on their face that really shows under the lights with makeup on it. So very important to shave everybody. Shout out to Dove. Just shampoo, conditioner, regular old shampoo, conditioner especially because you've got to comb through all the hair, especially really long hair. You got to comb through all of it and try and keep it from getting snarly and crazy. So then after that initial injecting is done, we do what's called aspirating. Kind of the, not going for shock and awe here, people, but so there is a hydro aspirator is what most people use. So through the water going through the machine, it creates a suction. And so what we're trying to do with aspirating is get all of the fluids and poop, I guess essentially, out of your system in your whole belly area, in your cavity, because that is the first spot where you decompose. I've talked before, if you see a deer on the side of the road and the belly is big and huge, that's because that's the first part of a body that decomposes. You fill with gases there and all sorts of junk. So you want to get what is in the cavity out and get some fluid in there to preserve it so that body doesn't decompose. So we use what's called a trocar to do that. I'm going to step back so it doesn't look so scary because it is kind of big and crazy looking. It essentially is like a little needle, big needle, but it's got little holes at the top. There, now you can see through. And this is put into the abdomen, 2 inches over and 2 inches up from the belly button is what we're taught. And the purpose is to try and puncture each internal organ and get out as much fluid as possible. And that's hooked up to the aspirator, and so there's a suction on this when it's hooked up to a tube, and there's a suction, so as you're aspirating, the fluid's all coming out and it's going through the system and going out into the regular drain as well. So I love having a clear tube so I can see what's coming out. I can see when I've kind of gotten a pocket of fluid out, and that way I kind of know when things are done, when I've drained as much as I can and I've gotten out as much as I can. So then it takes about 15-20 minutes. Sometimes I know some people that they aspirate for 30 minutes. That's it. Doesn't matter what's going on, 30 minutes, and that's what they're doing for 30 minutes is they're aspirating. So after that then, this trocar is hooked up to a short tube with that cavity fluid that I talked about before. And then straight fluid is put back in, just a drainage system. It's a short tube. You hook the bottle upside down here, comes down the tube into here, and it goes right into here because we want the straight fluid into the cavity because it's going to get to work and do its business most effectively when it's not watered down. So, all right. And if you guys have questions about what I'm saying, please post them. So, that's the trocar. This part I think is the scariest that people don't know about, and when this bad boy gets whipped out, it's like, oh my gosh, don't ever embalm me. There's a lady who wrote a book several years ago, and she talked about this part of embalming and made it so horrific, and that's when people flipped out about having funerals and embalming and doing their thing. So after that's done, then, okay, this is called a trocar button. So in the hole that's made in the abdomen, the small little hole, this is placed in, and so it's just screwed in essentially with this into the hole, and that's what plugs it. Some people do suture it closed, but It is really just a little 1 centimeter hole that needs to be filled. So that part's done, and then also the incision in the neck is sutured up. Many different variations on sutures. I actually just learned a new one about a month ago I had never seen, and I was blown away because it was an awesome new way to suture. So there's, like at the crematory, there's always something new to be learned when it comes to this stuff. So then in the incision, a lot of embalmers will use like a powder. This is a quick sealing powder. So this is put in because if there's any small leakage or anything, that acts as an absorber, and so it'll poof right up and kind of fill it in to try and keep from any leaking happening. You know, the goal is that there's no leaking during visitation or services, and that the body or the family doesn't have to see that happening, because sometimes bodies purge, especially if that gas builds up in the stomach. It's going to push out or down and out anything that's in there, and so it could come out the mouth, the nose, the lower places. And so we want to keep that from happening, and so that's kind of the main goal. We do take precautions against that from happening. So if a body is maybe extra leaky, say for some reason, maybe they continue to urinate, or maybe they had a problem where they do have leakage out of their bottom. There's kind of plastic pants that we can put on. There's full plastic suits that we can put on individuals if needed, just to prevent leaking into the clothing from going on. And it literally looks like full pair of stockings or underwear, things like that, that are made just of plastic. And that's just, it's all about presentation. Like I've said, there's a lot kind of goes on behind the scenes that we're doing to make sure the body and the person looks the best they can for the family, and that the family doesn't have to know that mom was leaking poop and we couldn't get it to stop, so we had to do this. And so, and it's nothing bad that we're doing to the deceased. We're just trying to make it so she is looking her best and smelling her best and everything for the visitation, if that makes sense, hopefully. So let me look around and see what else I can show you guys without the camera falling. All right, so you can also see in here there is eye wash station, going back to the kind of protection. You know, there's by law things that we have to have and we have to use, and so that's there in case you get any fluid in your eyes. You know, sometimes the pressure from the injection can shoot blood out, and so can shoot fluid out. One of the, you know, the tube that's put in can shoot back out, and then the fluid's just kind of spraying out. Or when you're aspirating, that pressure system can reverse, and so the internal fluids can start spraying out the end of the trocar. These are things that they do happen, and so that's why we wear what we wear, and we try and protect our eyes and protect our mouths and protect our clothing and everything. There's a ventilation system also that's hopefully sucking out a lot of those fumes and fluid that comes, because there's a lot more fluid exposure, you know, especially with an autopsy body, when the whole cavity is empty, so there's no central, you know, the heart's not in there connecting everything, so the fluid is more just free going into when you're injecting. You have to inject from inside the body down into the arms, up into the head, down into the legs. Well, when that fluid comes back around, it's just pooling up, so it's more exposure for us to all those fluids rather than an enclosed system inside the body. So there's definitely a lot more exposure when we do an autopsy body or a body donation. Body donations are becoming more and more problematic for the embalmer, just because they are becoming more invasive when they go into to get the the organs and the tissue and so forth. So there's a lot more exposure when it comes to that as well. More fluid that comes back out rather than goes where it needs to go, essentially, without getting too crazy into what I'm talking about there. Also got, so I'm moving quickly, we've got linens. Not very exciting. Got, let me show you like down here we've got some gloves, but also have, oh, let me get out. Sorry for the movement, guys. Cosmetics. So there are cosmetic kits that are created just for deceased, because the chemical makeup of let's say, oil of Olay or anything is made for skin that is hotter and oilier than deceased. So this makeup was created for their, deceased person's temperatures and skin kind of consistency. And so there are a lot of embalmers that swear by Mary Kay, or they swear by Oil of Olay, or whatever the brand is that they want to use. And then there is cosmetics that is created just for deceased skin. So I will use whatever is in the prep room I'm in, because I do freelance. So sometimes, prep rooms have different types of makeup, just like they have different types of fluids, so to speak, and so you just kind of use what's there. Talking about skin, so after the embalming, we do put, so this is called Kalon. It's a massage cream, it's a lotion that is for deceased skin. And I've heard some crazy stories about people who died in the desert and were dehydrated, and the embalmer used just this stuff to kind of bring their tissue back to a normal texture, because it's created, and it's, just to show you, it's literally white. It's just a lotion. It's just a lotion, but it's made for deceased skin, because they're not going to absorb like lotions that you and I would use. It's not, the same tissue. Just like when we shave, some embalmers use shave gel. I use shampoo, because I just need that barrier between the skin and the razor, because shave gel is created to work with the heat of your skin, and that since there's no heat with the deceased, it's not going to do its full job. So so then once we're done embalming, hair's brushed, the cream is on the face and the hands, the body is washed again, and then they're covered with a sheet typically. Sometimes they're moved over to a dressing table, but then we're done. It takes an hour or 2 hours. With autopsy, body donation bodies sometimes can take 3-4 hours. Or 2 days where we have to come back the next day to finish. So it just all depends on the needs of the deceased and kind of how things are going with the embalming. So I'm trying to see if there's anything else in here that might be of interest. We do have a sharps container for scalpels and stuff. There's cleaners, there's soaps, just to wash up the prep table when done. I just pulled some stuff out so I'd have it out so I could talk about it. We've got gloves. Any questions while I'm in here that anybody might have about this space at all? Yeah, so that is just a brief overview of the embalming room. It's hard for me to look at it with a perspective of it anything being odd to me, because I've been working in this room for so many years that to me this is all just second nature. So I don't look at things as being I guess, interesting to anybody else, but they probably are. I know I've been asked before, and I'll go there, about, you know, plugs for other areas of your body if they're leaking, and there are such things that can be used, but I have never used one or been in a prep room. I don't think that's, maybe I have that's had one, but I've never used them. Just trying to look. Their skin tint, let's see. So this is tint that's brushed on the skin, just to give a little bit pinker part of the cosmetic process. So you don't have to put like a foundation type cosmetic on. You can just use the tint just to give it a little pink. You know, especially on a man, you don't want to paint him up if you don't have to. Now there's some directors that they kind of do the same cosmetic procedure on every body that they get ready, but I'm a less is more kind of girl too, and so I try and use the least amount of things that I can when getting someone ready. So I think that is the best overview I can give. I hope that this has been a little informative, and hopefully you learned a little something. Maybe it's way more scary to you than it was before. Maybe it's a little less scary. I don't know, but I'll obviously answer any questions if you guys have them after this, so just post them on this video. I'll be happy to answer them. Happy to, you know, kind of do a follow-up if there's enough more questions. So I hope to talk to you guys soon.